Yeah, I should probably do something about that. This week on the War Review, I'm joined by Crofty and Way2Raw for a discussion on attack priorities, room placements, and general strategies in war. It's a bit of an abbreviated addition to the War Review this week because of the Super Bowl and some of our scheduling times just didn't line up. I hope you guys enjoy. Welcome to the Situation Room. Way2Raw's alliance has been doing some kind of funky attack priorities, and that's why I got us all together today, is to kind of discuss what rooms should we be targeting first and why in war. Keep in mind, some of us here like war, some of us don't really care so much about it, but there's no reason not to try your hardest regardless of what kind of defenses you're putting up, how hard your alliance goes into it, whether you guys are all going at it in the beginning. But there are different strategies for different types of alliances. Like if all 24 people are there's different ways to attack. And if people don't show up until the very end, there's different strategies. Anyway, we're going to go over some of those today. And I thought I would ask you, Crofty, does your alliance go real hard in war?
We all do our attacks. We just try to win. If we don't win, not the end of the world, because obviously you don't get much for winning or losing. It's no difference, is it?
Now, does your alliance all show up right when the bell dings, or do you guys just kind of wander in and get your attacks in throughout the day?
Probably 75% of us turn up right at the start.
Okay.
And it can be a different 75%. There's a couple who are always there. But we've got a couple of guys who they love war. Like they're hitting that 30-40 million damage per war.
Mm-hmm. So. Now, I kind of understand this, but for our viewers, and I think Raw understands this also, but just in case, why is it important if you're in an alliance that wants to win every war? Why is it important that everybody shows up right at the start of war?
Get to them main rooms. Quicker you get armory down, quicker you get hangar down. It means the opposition have got a harder job to take your main room down. So the quicker you get that, you make their job harder, and it makes your job easier.
Okay, so
full clears are quick as possible.
Okay.
What we're currently doing.
You say armory and hangar, that's your number one priorities. Is that always going to be the number one priority?
We will go down one side, so FD1 or FD3. We will always go down one of them sides. But work our way down. If we find hangar first, we destroy hangar first straight away, full out. If we find armory first, we take out armory first. But if we go through barracks or med bay or anything like that, we'll carry on going until we get to the bottom. And then we'll clear across to the bottom. Because usually that's where armory or hangar is.
I see.
But, yeah.
Now,
but armory or hangar is always first. Has to be.
Has to be? Is there...
Possible.
I've heard other strategies, because so your armory boost is 20% to primary stats on all attacking allies, extra 10% to military allies. So that slows down your opponent by making it harder for them to attack into you. And then the hangar is the same thing. It's into attacking war-ready allies and applying deflect to attacking allies. I've heard other strategies that it's better to go after, say, cargo bay and barracks, as this is defending war-ready allies for cargo bay, and the barracks is defending allies, extra 10% bonus to military allies, so that it makes it easier for your alliance to attack into their helicarrier. Now, I think the two strategies are probably more for, like, if you get a jump on the other team, probably like what you're saying is go after that armory and hangar. But if they got the jump on you, you might try for the cargo bay and barracks opposingly. I've heard these arguments. I think all four are very valuable targets, and personally, when we go through a helicarrier, it's just whichever one of these we find first, we just will clear it. Do you think there's a strategy to that maybe you should switch depending on if your team is in the lead or not?
I think both are viable options. I think it depends on your alliance. So like I said, we're full clear in every single war. Whether we win or whether we lose, we're full clearing.
Mm-hmm.
So ours is usually a battle of time. So today we finished like 3-4 hours early.
Yeah.
But I think if you're going for the full clears, you want to try and make your oppositions as hard as possible. So the quicker you can get that armory down, that hanger down, you're making their fights harder going into these new fights like the Speed Eternals and stuff like that. But I think if you're in an alliance, say where like yours, where you're not full clear in every war, I think making your guys' fights easier is probably a good way to go. But I'd still prioritize armory and hanger if you do find it.
Right. So what you're saying is if you don't have the resources to full clear, you want to make sure that every attack counts by reducing the size of the attacks that you're going into. So cargo bay and barracks would be better because then you don't have as big a TCP as your opponent maybe. You don't have those bigger teams to clear what they've got. So if you can shrink the size, you kind of even the score. But I mean, if they're going after your armory and your hangar, then it's kind of balances each other out anyways. So it really, it's kind of a catch-22, but definitely those 4 rooms for me are the highest priority, and then followed by med bay just to reduce the overall health bonus to everybody. Now Raw, your alliance has a little bit different strategy. They tend to go for 2 other rooms first, don't they?
So their strategy is just bridge. Like they go for points as fast as they can. And it's not like it doesn't win from time to time. We do really well in war, actually. We punch up a lot. But because we're punching up so much, we don't full clear. And that's fine. But I think we would maximize the amount of attacks we could get in if we went for something like cargo bay and barracks to overall make the teams equal. That makes sense.
So you're thinking that the secondary target, cargo bay barracks, shrink the size of the opponents so that your attacks have a better chance of more successful attacks. It's not about speed with you, it's just how many attacks you can get.
Well, yeah, because we're a little bit more casual in the sense that we don't have everybody there the second that the timer goes off. We don't have everybody there 30 minutes before it ends, and there's no minimum requirement for attacks. But you will get yelled at if you don't get your attacks in. So it's kind of a weird. There's a lot of unspoken rules. There's no rules, but there's a lot of unspoken rules. Don't break them.
That's you bring up a good point with the unspoken rules. Having good communication. If you want to be successful in war, you need to be able to communicate your attack strategy with your alliance. You should have at least 1 war captain so that they can be there at the start of war, picking the targets, making sure everybody's directed where they need to go, and have a game plan ahead of time that everybody understands and agrees to. If you want to be competitive, if you want to full clear first. Otherwise, you can be like my alliance, where it's like half of us show up at the start of war, half of us kind of meander in at the end. We all try and get a minimum of 5 attacks. Some of us like to go for 14, like myself. I like chasing after that currency, and so I go for the 14 attacks. And it's just kind of like I like to just pick and choose the challenge of those fights, and I'm not really looking for the win because the difference between the win and the loss isn't huge. Someday, I think I would like to be in a hyper-competitive alliance and try those full clear matches and really push and be there at the start. But right now, waking up at, 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. to do your final attack, that doesn't sound like fun to me, so totally not even going to bother with that.
Oh, you have a weird war.
Oh, a lot of people have that late one. A lot of people have that late one where they got to wake up in the middle of the night for a close war.
I'm someone who, like, I do school and stuff during my day. And I have certain breaks, and I log into attack into. They're very specific on one side, 1 mark at a time. That's it. And they will not move that mark until it's cleared. Even if there's 1 team that's giant and I can't take it. And I know that there's a lot of us in the alliance that are like that. I have very specific big teams, and the rest are pretty mediocre to shit, to be honest. But I'm logging in multiple times a day, waiting for a new a marker attack, and it'll sit there for like 5 or 6 hours on one room with this one big team because they need that cleared.
You're basically waiting for one or two of your teammates who can handle that attack to show up and clear it.
We're waiting for that
Meanwhile, there's 22 of you waiting to go take down lesser teams elsewhere.
Yes, and then everyone gets in trouble. You know, and then it's, why aren't you getting your attacks in, and you're expected to do this, and it's like, we've all been here. We're all waiting. Like, I don't know how you guys handle that. I'm curious, like, is that the war captain's job to be like, hey, this person is the one who can take this and tag them, here's the lesser room for everyone else? Like, I'm just curious how other alliances do it, because to me it's really frustrating. I don't think it's fair, and I mean, I don't want to get yelled at. I'm here. I'm participating. So.
But since war's not your thing, you're not going to stick your neck out and cause a commotion. You're just going to deal with it.
I don't want to take over war, so I try and let them do their thing, whether I agree or not. But I have a problem with this particular strategy right here. But I don't know if that's a normal strategy. Maybe I'm in the wrong.
Yeah. So my thing is that on the start of war, we're usually going to flight decks, and we tend to go right down the middle. We pick one side and just drill straight down until we find one of the rooms, like hangar or armory or cargo bay or barracks, actually. One of those 4 that we'll stop and start to clear. Usually we run into something like what you're seeing on the screen as a bridge over a security. And then a lot of times if that security is in the center, we'll go ahead and clear that, because the defense down to 4 different adjacent rooms causes us so many problems. It's easier to get rid of that first. Not to mention it opens up horizontally 2 different rooms, which is usually something good. You know, you usually put security adjacent to something good. And so that's what happens when we find security in the middle. If we find security off to the side, we try to work around it, you know, go through it or work around it. Because it's not, it's on the fence of whether it's worth clearing or not for a team that doesn't full clear. But back to my point, when we start war and it's a flight deck, I'm finding these 200 to 400K teams, and my top 14 attack teams are all 500 plus, and I don't want to punch down. So I go into the start of war and I sit and stare at the screen. And no matter what attack priorities are placed, it's going to be that way across all those flight decks for me most of the time, and that kind of sucks. But Crofty, do you ever get into a situation where there's a room that's marked and you don't have any way to attack and you're just smashing your keyboard because you want to do something?
I'd say at the start of war, it's like I said, one room gets marked and we all go down that exact mark. We all try and find our way. Like I said, there's usually enough people there to get us down. Towards the end of war, not really. It's a lot of smaller teams, so that at the end of war, it's literally all 3 flight decks, security and engineering. That's what we have left. They're not usually massive teams in there, so it's usually punching down, to be fair, in every single room.
Yeah. The thing is that's normal. That's not really something that your alliance can fix. The flight decks are going to be easy to use a top TCP in your alliance, right? What I'm complaining about, because I don't have a problem logging in and saying, oh, I can't attack right now, I'll come back in a little bit. It's when I come back 6 times in a day, and the same spot is marked and nobody's got through it, and we're not going to change it until that's cleared. And me also knowing that I've got like 10 other alliance mates that are doing the same thing.
Yeah.
They're there. They're logging in. Some of them are taking their breaks at work to do it because we all have lives.
Right.
That's where my frustration comes from. I don't mind logging in and being like, oh, I can't do this one. And if the mark changes, oh, I can't do this one. I have a very specific ass roster, so I know that there's a lot that I can't do, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to be coming in and wasting my time and get in trouble because I didn't attack or I didn't meet my attack quota. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think the way that we solve that in our alliance is we have multiple captains, and anybody can mark a room that's a captain. and we don't put a lot of pressure on it. So we try to look for the hot targets. And then when we notice that, hey, there's like 3 big teams and no one's attacking it, somebody will come and put a secondary target in there. A lot of times what I like to do is I target one room and then put the yellow do not attack sign on everything else except one other room. So you have your red target, and then you have one that's like, okay, if you can't hit the red target, there's this one that's available. People can visually see this is a secondary target.
So you know that in our alliance, if it doesn't have red on it, you don't attack. Yeah. And we do have multiple captains. I'm one included. But it's, like I said, it's this unwritten thing of if you're not through this one area that's marked, you don't do a second target unless we're like the last 30 minutes in war. And I don't know. I'm frustrated with it.
I think that's an absolutely terrible strategy that your captains are using, because while you're waiting on 1 or 2 people to show up and clear that room, your opposing alliance is debilitating your ability to attack. They're reducing your defenses and they're chipping away at everything. And so you're losing time and power. So every second counts.
I see, and I agree with that. Sorry. I agree with that. I'm just trying to understand and put it out there and see how other people do it and get different strategies. I like the idea of marking one red mark and this is our main goal, but here's one that's not marked. White or red as a secondary if you can't get it in. I think that sounds like a great idea, in my opinion.
Crofty, have you seen some of the top alliances? I don't know if they do this anymore. I haven't really been paying attention when I watch like some of the other content creators' videos that are putting out some of the high-end war videos. I haven't been watching for it yet. But there was a time when their entire alliance would start right at the start of war, and they would pick one side of all 3 flight decks, and they would just go down all 3 rows at the same time. And as soon as they found a hot target, whether they were prioritizing hangar and armory or cargo bay and barracks or even med bay, they would just go down one side of all 3 columns and then clear those hot targets when they found them. Do you ever see any alliances doing that anymore? Is that still a thing that people do?
We had an alliance face us about a week ago, and they went down 2 sides. So they went FD1 and FD3 on us. Then they beat us, and they was punching up on us, but there was a really war-orientated alliance, and they put a beating on us. How they did it. This sounds weird because they took everything off defense. So the biggest teams we could find on defense were like 500k. There was nothing. We were saving everything. Like, we was like, I don't want to punch down on that. You know what I'm saying? Don't want to punch down. Don't want to punch down. Don't want. By the end of the war, there was like, we should have been punching down. So all the time, they had all the big attack teams, and they just literally went through our defense like it was butter. But because we didn't expect this, we were saving our big teams when it comes to certain rooms, and we didn't need to, because every team was like, I mean, there was an odd couple of like 600k teams, like Heroes for Hire and stuff like that, but everything seemed to be around like 400k. It was a weird war, and they beat us.
That's an interesting strategy. Just make your team not use their big teams because they don't want to punch down. I know at the start of war, I don't want to attack because I just refuse to punch down more than 100k. I like punching up 100k. That's actually interesting. And it brings me to another point. So let's go into here's my defensive setup. Please don't laugh too loudly. I like to put my teams like, well, I guess I don't have them. Normally I'd put my Heroes for Hire, which I didn't bother building because I hate the team. Normally I put these teams at the very back because that's the one that people get stuck on. Web Warriors is another one that people are kind of watching out for. And then you've got your new Warriors, or this used to be a Doom team right here. So I put those bigger teams at the back so that as you're taking a look at these rooms, and I know you can't see my screen, but I'm showing just the armory now. As you're looking at those rooms, when you first go into a room, the war captain is looking around going, who should we target, left or right? And you can do one of two things. You can back out and look at the player's TCP to see which one of those two is the bigger player. And then you look at the first 4 teams showing and you kind of judge. Do we want to go after the bigger person with the tougher teams first and get them out of the way? Do we want to go with the smaller person with the smaller teams first, get them out of the way? Like, that's a decision for your war captains. I'm really not sure which strategy works best. Personally, I like to go for the bigger people first, so that later when we come back to clear a room or something, we can do that more easily. But that might be a terrible strategy. You might want to be going for the smaller people. But the point is, I like to hide my biggest, toughest teams at the back. So when people are trying to judge how good of a defense I have, they don't know. Like, you would look at my TCP compared to the rest of my alliance and think, wow, this guy's going to have a huge heroes for hire. And then come to find out I have one of the smallest heroes for hire on my alliance because I hate the team. So I keep them out of the first 4. Where do you put your teams in the 1 through 10 placement? Do you put them up front or in the back?
In the back. My big teams are in the back. So my heroes for hire. I've got a Doom Brotherhood with Deathpool in there. And then I've got my Web Warriors and stuff all hid at the back. Just the simple reason that my alliance were getting full clear. Well, I said we're full clearing and they're full clearing us every single one. So it doesn't really matter trying to protect. We just want our teams further back so that maybe they use a Weapon X or an Infinity Watch or something like early. Like yesterday, we had a team start and they used Infinity Watch on my Web Warriors. That's 1.1 million in war. But then the next team that come up was my Heroes for Hire. So there's a Infinity Watch gone, but was wasted on a Web Warriors. That's how we look at it, because it's always we're probably going to get full cleared. Make them use the stronger teams at the start, and then maybe when they get to the end, they've not got enough to clear. I think actually we didn't get full clears.
Yeah. Well, and in war, every team is beatable. Every single defense is beatable. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think every single composition that is known right now is a one-shot. Now, you may have to use some ridiculous stuff, but that's what war is all about, is which teams are you forcing your opponents to use, where, and when. You know, and if you can get them to waste a big Infinity Watch on a punch down into some crappy team, and then you have a Heroes for Hire after that, and they don't have, you know, if they used up all their stuff for it, it slows them down a lot. I think it's very important that you hide your big teams at the back. Don't show them what you have going on early, because I know as a war captain, I'm looking at the first 4. I'm judging their TCP, and I'm making decisions on what I know and assuming a lot to try and figure out my strategy for how I get through that helicarrier. And all of that is so that I can get to the most important rooms, which from in my opinion is a coin flip between armory and hangar or cargo bay and barracks, and then followed by med bay, and then it's everything else. And like I said, once in a while we will stop to clear security, because I think there's some people in my alliance that have some trouble paying attention to the defense down, and they walk into a room and they get tripped up by it. And so I tend to like to clear security also, if it's in the center, if it's in the middle of everything.
To kind of go back for a second, you made the comment about choosing the bigger side of a room. And I mean, that's awesome if you can do it, but I think that's very specialized to your alliance. That's not something my alliance could do. We would go for the easier side to get the most attacks from the most people. Have quite a few of us actually have pretty slim rosters. Alliance.
Well, I think the reason I do that, and this is probably a mistake actually, I think you should probably be choosing the smaller side to get through faster and get to the important rooms. That's probably the best way to do it. Yeah, and I think why I do this is because I carry a strategy from the flight deck where I shouldn't apply it. And so if we see a flight deck where there's a missing person and it's going to be all shield guards, we leave those shield guards for last, because we know that we can beat those with 10 attacks real easy, real quick if we need to. And instead, we go after the other side of the flight deck, which is also going to be fairly easy relative to the rest of the helicarrier. And we clear that first. So it's like we have this 50, well, I guess it'd be 100 points because 10 teams and then the room bonus, the 50 points for the room. So we have this 100 points just sitting there waiting for us at the end of war if we need to come back to it. And I get this is probably a fallacy and I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm carrying that strategy further down into the helicarrier when we're going through rooms like a reactor. You know, I would choose the bigger person in this reactor that I'm showing on screen and then saving the smaller team for later to come back to. And that's probably not a great idea. It's probably better that I change that approach and go for the smaller side.
If it works for you and your alliance, then I don't see what the problem is. I'm just saying that whoever's watching, that's for your alliance in that position. Not every alliance is the same. Well, that's not a strategy that my alliance could take on.
Right. I think that strategy is flawed, and I'm saying I'm not recommending that to anybody, and I think you guys are right. Go for the weaker side first in all cases, other than that flight deck case.
One reason that my alliance goes for bridge so hard, because we only have so many big teams. And so if bridge has big teams, they don't want to waste it on cargo bay, barracks, whatever, because those are only 50 points. They want to go for as many get for the few giant teams that we have. And so I understand it from that point of view, but I also feel like if you take out cargo bay and barracks, then the teams in bridge shouldn't be so hard.
That's right.
But and I don't know if this is true. They're saying that the percentage difference isn't that much. It's not enough to make a difference. We wouldn't be able to take it in the end. And I'm asking, is it enough? I
think that's a judgment call. And again, you're back to the first 4 rooms and judging the players' TCP out of the roster list and seeing, okay, how big is this alliance? How big are these 2 people in bridge? What are they showing up front? Are we going to be able to take these later on? Or do we smash away at it and 2-tap everything in there now? And it's a tough call when you're not a full clear alliance. That's a really tough call.
And that is something to take into consideration. You know, I'm taking advice from everybody, from you, from Crofty, from these bigger alliances who, like, Crofty full clears. He honestly, he could probably attack with any strategy and his alliance would full clear and go all flight decks first.
Right.
I don't doubt it. But we're very small in comparison.
And that is the difference. In a full clear, you're going for speed. It's who full clears first. And so that's why Crofty's alliance is going after hangar and armory first to slow down their opposition, and then cargo bay and barracks next to help speed themselves up. And then med bay would just be to, again, a little bit more speed because you're reducing the amount of health from the enemy team. I believe it's 40%. Yes, 40% health to all defending allies, making those defenses easier. Now, a team like me who does not full clear, but gets most, like we usually have like 2 rooms left over at the end of war. And that's mostly because there's people who aren't participating to their fullest in war. And that's fine. That's not what we're about. We're about raids. So for us, it's kind of the other way around. It's cargo bay and barracks to make what attacks we are going to use count, and then hangar and armory to slow the other team down, because usually the other team, like, we rarely get cleared ourselves. Like, hardly ever does anybody ever clear us either. So from my perspective and where my alliance is, the armory and the hangar are second in value. And so there's all these different strategies. And for you guys watching at home, you know, put in the comments how big your alliance is. Are you full clearing? What is your attack strategy? Do you think that some of these things are making sense and resonating with you, or does this all sound like a whole bunch of hot garbage? Now, I know Crofty, and I know his alliance, and I know a lot of people. They work well. The hangar armory on a full clear first, that is the tried and true strategy. I know that. It's everything down in between. Like, do you attack left, right, middle? Do you attack 2 columns at a time or 3 columns at a time? You know, which rooms are you drilling through? Which rooms are you stopping to clear? These are all things that you have to stop and talk with your alliance with, communicate on, have certain strategies, and then, it's going to depend on what you're going into. Like Crofty was saying, he came up on an alliance that it just seemed like they were saving their good stuff for last, and so they refused to punch down, and it took them too long, and they lost. And they were just fooled, And I think that's a fantastic strategy. I mean, we all say, what's that?
Playing 2 years. I've been playing 2 years, and I've never ever seen that many small teams on defense. There was like 100k teams.
Yeah.
100k teams. And I was like, what?
They really took the whole offense over defense first thing literally, and that's why you do it, because they had everything they needed in any circumstance to attack through your alliance. No matter what defense you put up, they had the counter for it because they had everything available to them on offense. So it was just a matter of making sure that their entire alliance showed up at the start and they all worked quickly. And
I don't think that strategy would work against like my alliance.
Yeah.
We have so many, like we all have a handful of big and then all small.
Mm-hmm.
We would have been feasting.
Mm-hmm.
Like we would have gone crazy. But for you, like you two who sit there and are like, I don't want to punch down. All my teams are too big. I think that's awesome. Kudos to that alliance.
I say there's 3 different levels of war, and there's runs, there's raws, there's yours, and then there's mine. It's how do you want to get through it? Like you're going for points because you don't full clear. So I think where Raw was saying before about going for bridge, I think that's a good idea. If you're not clearing, and it's gonna come down to a point situation.
Yes.
Eventually, you get into bridge and reactor, getting 200 points off. So they've cleared your bridge, you cleared their reactor, and then they can't clear your bridge, but you can get those. They need to then clear 3 or 4 of the rooms to get more points than you.
Yeah.
It depends. It totally depends. I don't think you should be going straight for bridge. I really don't.
No, we usually do.
And I don't think that you should be in your situation be having just one line of sight. I think you should be going down. Say you go down FD1, but then most of your alliance get stuck. Then send the rest of your alliance down FD3 and try and find another room. Try and find a cargo bay or a barracks or a med bay. But that's all I'd say is try and your alliance needs to talk more amongst each other. If you've got 10 people sitting there and they've got attacks to use, and then it's coming to the end of the war and they can't use them attacks because they can't beat that team in that one mert room, then your war captains need to have a hard look at themselves and say, look, there's something not happening right here. Raw's logging on 6 times and she can't attack. Why is that happening?
Mm-hmm.
Not her fault because she wants to attack. But she can't because if she goes elsewhere, I understand this because I do look into war and I'm like, why is if somebody attacks off Merc, which doesn't happen often with us, it happens like once every 6 months. So it's like if somebody attacks off it, it's like, why is he attacking there? Somebody must have put a Merc on and then taken it back off. But I think you should have 2 Mercs for your alliance, Liz, Raw. I think you should definitely have 2 marks.
Well, especially, I don't necessarily mind the 1 mark. It's just like, I feel like there should be a time limit. That makes sense.
Well, I think once you get down to like when there's 3 teams left in that room and everybody can see what's there.
They're all giant
and they're
boosted.
all giant teams. At that point, it's time to mark what comes next. Because if I log in and I see 2 rooms, one that has all 10 teams available, but it's marked, or I should say all 20 teams available or whatever. It's marked, but no one's attacked it yet. And I see another room that's also marked and it's got 3 huge teams available. I'm looking at those 3 huge teams to see if I can take 1, 2, or 3 of them, because that's what I want to do. I want to go for those big teams and I want to drop that room. And if your alliance knows that and they see those 2 rooms marked, they're going to go after the smallest. They're going to try and drop the room first rather than go after an easy target. I think most people know this.
Play devil's advocate, I'm not 100% sure that everyone, and I think that's one reason why.
Oh yeah.
I think that there's the few people that are hardcore enough that would go in and say yes, I can take it. But I'm not sure that everyone would. And and so I understand it. I'm just trying to, I don't know,
I
get
guess
around it.
the two-tier system of marking where you have the red marked room, the unmarked room, and then the do not attack
That's
rooms
kind of what I was
is
thinking.
probably going to be the best bet. So at least there's a visual cue. And then if people still aren't getting it, then you need to have a conversation with your alliance mates. Now, Crofty, you mentioned that maybe with her alliance, it's a good idea that they are going after bridge and reactor first
Points.
for the points. Would you say then?
First, I'd still say they should be trying to clear the rooms to make it easier on them. So try and get a barracks out or a med bay or a cargo bay.
Mm-hmm.
Probably I'd probably say in Raw's alliance, don't even touch cargo bay because it's war ready. It's war ready defense teams, I believe.
Right. That's true. With her, with the people that she's attacking into, it's not going to change much.
Yeah. How many are they going to have war ready for that team? So I'd go for med bay and barracks would be the main two what Raws should be going for. And if they get to it and they get to a point where they've got a big team, then switch. So nobody's going to attack them big teams. Then switch and put another mark somewhere else. It can't be one mark when can't be like because it's coming to the end of one. So Liz has got 2, 3, 4 attacks left.
7.
Other people have got that as well.
I had 7 attacks at 30 minutes before war ended the other day.
But look at it, so you've got 7, and so you're saying there's about 10 other people that have got it, are happening like that as well. That's near enough, 50 to 70 attacks what are not getting used.
Well, and that's just the ones I know about. That's just who has like reached out to me and talked to me and is like, hey, what's going on here? There might be more. I don't know. And I don't personally care about getting yelled at. That's never ever bothered me. Sometimes I just do stuff my way and say, hey, I'm the one who did it. Come and get me. I don't care. It's other people in the alliance, people that I recruit that look up to me. I don't know. Yeah.
For me, if there's that many attacks at the end were not getting used, that's 250 points if there's 50 attacks not being used. That could win or lose a war at your situation.
For sure.
Yeah,
no,
that's
for
a total
sure.
waste. If the goal for her alliance is to make sure to drop the bridge and reactor simply because they aren't able to close down very many rooms, then I would say on your defensive setup in your alliance, you should make sure that your bridge and your reactor are the most heavily fortified by placing reactor and bridge adjacent to security toward the bottom of your helicarrier and put your biggest and best teams in there so that they do have to clear a lot more rooms than you guys are clearing to make up the difference.
Yep. Sense. I don't know how we have our setup, to be honest.
No, you don't want to show off your alliance defense like I do. I think I've clicked on almost every single room.
Like I said, I'm new to war, so you have to keep that in mind. That I'm new to this. I haven't been part of every conversation and every strategy sesh and whatnot. I'm coming in. I'm just coming in recent, basically. Mm-hmm. I don't care. It's the alliance, the others in my alliance that I care about.
Crofty, you're still streaming on the weekends, right?
Yeah, I didn't manage to this weekend. I've that birthday weekend, so I've been out doing quite a lot. So.
Okay. Well, I will put your links down in the description of this video. And we don't have any teams to go over today because today's Super Bowl Sunday and we're going to be off to the big game. We got family and stuff to do, things like that. Plus, it's been a relatively slow week in MSF land. Most of the people are just complaining about the overall state of the game right now. And I wanted to get away from that, just do something different, talk about some of these strategies that we have, my wife and I have been discussing privately for a while now. Help people out. I hope this was helpful for you guys, the viewers at home. Let me know. What kind of strategies do you use? What works? How big is your alliance? Where do you guys go full clear? Do you start? What time zone are you in? Does that matter to you? All these things. They're great stuff and great topics. Just, put them down in the comments, or you can find me at my Discord and talk about that stuff there too. We love to have these discussions. We're a whole bunch of theory crafters in there and we have a lot of fun. So thank you, Crofty, for joining me for this call. I know it's late over there and I kept you up probably too late, but I appreciate you coming on, and happy birthday, buddy. Happy birthday to you.
I appreciate it. That's one.
Woo! All right. Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.